Now that the Trump tax framework has been out for some time and has been analyzed by many different nonprofit organizations to see the kind of impact that it would actually have, and keep in mind that this is still a vague framework, but look, since it's been out for a while and since people have actually been able to see, in essence, what it's going to do and how it's going to impact them, it turns out they are not very happy with it. According to a new CNN poll, a slim majority of Americans oppose President Trump's tax reform proposal. Now, let me break down the numbers here. Like I said, 52% oppose Trump's tax reform, while a third say that they actually support the Trump plan. Now, that third is, I guess, roughly people who actually support Trump and actually believe in things like trickle-down economics, which is ridiculous. When you break it down by party, you're not going to be surprised. 8 in 10 Republicans, 8 in 10 Democrats, 81%, said that they oppose the plan. 7 in 10 Republicans say that they support the plan. But what matters here are the independent votes. And independents, when asked, opposed the plan, 50% to 35%. Now, this framework plan would consolidate the number of tax rates from 7 to just 3, 12, 25, and 35. The plan would also increase the standard deduction, increase the child tax credit, and repeal the alternative minimum tax. Now, it would also drop the corporate tax rate to just 20%, which would increase the deficit by about $1.5 trillion over 10 years, and this is according to Senate Republicans. Now, how do they pay for that? Well, they don't. They don't because they can't. That's why you hear them say, oh, don't worry, this will create growth and it'll pay for itself. But there's no credible study out there that actually shows that it will pay for itself. That's not how it works. Look, whenever we cut taxes on the rich, the economy does not do better, and we end up having giant deficits. Why? Well, number one, giving money to already rich people makes no sense. It keeps out of circulation. They don't go and buy things like regular Americans do when they get money. Most Americans spend the entirety of their check every time they get it. Every time they get money in their hands, most of them will have to spend it. With super wealthy people, they don't. They put it in their bank account. Maybe they'll invest in it in the stock market, which doesn't really help regular people. But they don't really put it all that much back into circulation. Now, some of you might be thinking, Jeff, why do you hate rich people? Why do you always go after rich people? Well, the problem is that I don't hate rich people. That's the thing. And that's not even really the issue. See, the issue is rich people already have everything they want. So, and since they have almost everything they want, they're not going to be able to buy enough to make up for the lack of spending power from a strong middle class. And in a consumer-driven economy, that's kind of important that middle-class people have money. Oh, but Jeff, there's a middle-class tax cut tucked away in here, and it's incredibly small. The people that are going to benefit most from this tax plan are the super wealthy. And again, we have proof that not only does the tax cut not help the economy overall, it doesn't create jobs either. Now, according to an analysis by the Institute for Policy Studies, cutting corporate taxes has not been proven to create jobs. The researchers basically relied on companies' public accounting statements to calculate the amount of taxes paid and on a company and news reports to assess changes in payroll. Now, what they found is that more than half of these lightly taxed companies, there was, I believe, 92 in total, actually shed jobs during the period when the overall economy boosted payrolls by 6%. This is during tax cuts, right? Of the 92 companies studied, the median change in payrolls was minus 1%. So, look, not only did they shed jobs, but they didn't give people that were working raises. So instead of creating jobs and boosting pay, what do these companies do? Well, many companies on the list use that money to buy back their own stock. That helps to boost the price of their company shares. The top 10 job cutters spent each $45 billion in stock buybacks over the 2008 to 2015 period, a pace 6 times than that of the S&P 500 corporate average, according to the researchers. The review also found that CEO pay among the 92 companies rose 18% during that same period, compared with a 13% increase among S&P 500 CEOs. So it's pretty obvious. We have that study. We have a myriad of other studies that show that, hey, when you cut taxes for corporations that are already super low, because again, nobody pays 35% with all the different loopholes in there. When you cut taxes for the rich, you don't gain jobs and you don't gain more pay, because guess what? They just go and use that money to boost themselves and to give themselves bigger and bigger bonuses. There's a lot of research, there's a lot of facts that actually back that up. Now, as a result, only 1/4 of Americans believe that they and their families would be better off if Trump's tax plans are signed into law. Because they see it like, yeah, that benefits the wealthy. Not me. I'm not wealthy. I'm not going to benefit from this enormous tax cut. I'm not going to benefit if you repeal the alternative minimum tax, which is one of the only reasons Trump had actually paid taxes, from what we know, because he won't release his tax returns. But anyway, back to the numbers. 31% actually expect to be worse off, and I think they're actually right. A plurality, however, 37% say that they and their families will be about the same should this tax plan pass, and 35%. So 35%, like I said the economy would get worse under the plan, and 31% think it would actually get better. Now, I agree that it would actually get worse in the long run. Why? Because of the fact that these companies don't hire people based on how much taxes they pay, but how much demand they have. Now, the modest gains for the middle class under this, tax plan proposal doesn't actually do enough to offset the enormous amount of revenue the government's going to end up losing. Now, that means more cuts in government services or more debt, two of the things that aren't the best for an economy. Now, speaking of the deficit, 38% say the Trump tax plan will increase the federal budget deficit, and that's actually true. 3 in 10, however, say the deficit would remain the same if the plan is enacted, and 2 in 10 say it will shrink the deficit. Now, here's where the majority is dead wrong. These tax cuts will definitely explode the deficit. Yet somehow, I think Republicans have convinced people that math doesn't actually work. Oh, no, if we cut taxes, we'll have more revenue. No, that's not how this works. It's not how any of this works. You don't just magically gain revenue from cutting the only way that you get revenue. Now, look, President Trump and the Republicans, they love to talk about, well, what about Ronald Reagan's tax cuts? That helped the economy. It created a whole lot of growth. Created some short-term growth, true. However, the 1981 tax cuts also triggered massive federal deficits. So they were actually reversed within 3 years, largely. Now, the Tax Reform Act of 1986 was revenue neutral, meaning that tax cuts were offset by spending cuts. So, but these are not revenue neutral. There is no way to raise revenue because since Reagan, we've already cut taxes to the bone. Now, look at what happened when we raised taxes. For example, Bill Clinton's tax hike. We actually had some pretty good growth, right? Now, the next administration, the George W. Bush administration, we did giant tax cuts again, right? And we ended up having very little economic growth. And then President Obama, he was supposed to raise taxes again, right? He didn't. He ended up cutting taxes, making most of the Bush tax cuts permanent, something that George W. Bush couldn't even do. And our economy is growing at about 1.8%, which is better than it was before, but it's still pretty sad. So the overall point is we have historical proof as well. It doesn't work. Tax cuts on the rich and corporations, they do not help anybody but the rich. And they also blow up the debt and the deficit, don't create jobs, and do not boost employee pay. The dynamic effect that they talk about is pure fantasy. The Laffer curve is laughably wrong. Or it would be if we didn't have an entire political party that based all their economic plans on more and more tax cuts. And another party that also is starting to buy into this as well. Plans like this have failed everywhere that they've tried. And look, Americans, at their core, they know that they don't want to give the rich more money. What most Americans want to do, even if they don't know the specifics, they understand that if you are wealthy, then maybe you should pay your fair share. And by the way, stop buying our politicians. Now, sadly, this will not stop until we elect our own politicians who refuse to take corporate or PAC money, who will actually put this economic fallacy known as trickle-down to bed. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.